Here we go.
Yay!
We're live.
Yay!
Yay! A happy Dulcimoon Talk. We're on number 45 with Helena Hallberg. And I'm so excited to have this conversation with you because I've been like following you on social media for a while. Like, oh, what's she doing next? Oh, what she's doing next. I mean, you've traveled so many places and you bring the dulcimer around with you and you're bringing the dulcimer into spaces that are not traditionally dulcimer spaces. And then you bring all of us dulcimer people kind of along with you too. I think it's just really great. So I'm
Oh,
very
thank you.
excited that you're with us today. Welcome.
Yeah, I'm happy to be here. Thank you so much for having me. Yeah.
So tell us a little about your sort of music and dulcimer origin story. How did you get started? What was your life like that brought you to this place where you're like traveling the world playing mountain dulcimer?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think I think with many people, especially of my generation, I got introduced to the dulcimer through Joni Mitchell and through Blue specifically. And then it took a few years till I could actually get a dulcimer. And but I knew that I wanted one. I had gone to school for jazz, so I was super interested in checking out the modes and thinking, outside of that diatonic box, which is really cool. Um, and then I was on tour, I think this was like 6, 7 years ago. Um, and we were going back. I was living in New York at the time, and we were traveling back to New York through Appalachia. And I was like, this is my chance. This is my chance to finally get a dulcimer.
Yeah.
And I called High Country Dulcimers in Boone, North Carolina. And Clarence Eugene, CE, picked up and told me that Mac McKinney, who was the luthier there, had passed a few days earlier. Um,
Wow.
yeah, so yeah, but and I had such a great chat with Clarence, and got to learn about their workshop, and he was Mac McKinney's apprentice, and so I got to learn. He told me about the workshop and everything, and then he sold me one of his the four last dulcimers that Mac McKinney built.
Wow.
Yeah, so that was how I got my first dulcimer, and I think that's it. It was kind of felt meant to be, but it also gave me such an incredible, like, immediate appreciation for the history and the craftsmanship that is behind this instrument.
Mhm.
So I'm really grateful that happened and that it worked out the way it did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's sort of serendipitous, the timing of
Yeah. Yeah. Yep.
that. Hmm.
Yep.
So when you were studying jazz, was it vocally or do you have other instrument background?
No, it was vocally. Yeah. I've always been a singer first and a songwriter, obviously, but yeah,
Mhm.
voice is
Mhm.
definitely number one for me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then you do play other instruments though, right?
I do. I mean, I started on piano when I was very young, and guitar and things like that. Definitely lots of it. Somebody told me recently they went to see me in a round or something, and they said, now you kind of play guitar like the dulcimer now. Like, it's kind of switched. Somebody was like,
Uh-huh.
play guitar like you play dulcimer now,
I
which is
am not a
great. I don't
guitar
mind
player
that
at
at
all, but
all.
every time I've tried, every my sister is always like, "You're playing it like a dulcimer player," and I'm like, "I don't even know what that means," but I also
Yeah.
don't know any other way to play it. So,
Right. Yeah. Yeah, it's fun.
yeah, that's
Yeah.
great. So I'm kind of curious about like musical influences in your life, both sort of the like vocal and jazz and songwriting. So obviously Joni Mitchell, but then who have been the people that you've been like watching for dulcimer and inspiration too?
I mean, you a lot. It's been a lot of the the visible people within the community, the teachers that come to
The
the
online things.
workshops. Oh,
Yeah.
100%. Yeah, the online courses. And this is something I say in my content all the time because I think it's very unique for an instrument to have such accessibility online, thanks to all the dulcimer festivals and the workshops.
Yeah.
And that's why I mention it in my content all the time, where I'm like, there is such a treasure trove of resources for sure.
Yeah, and
So
we're all
don't,
very like,
yeah,
how can we get it, how can we make it available, as opposed to like, how can we gatekeep it and make it hard for
exactly.
people to access, which is
Yeah,
some of what I think has happened in some of the academic kind of musical genre things.
definitely. Yeah, definitely. And that's, I mean, I'm sure you can relate to that. It's something you feel immediately coming into the community, that everyone wants to help and everyone wants to help you learn and find your place. And it's such a supportive community that's just, that's inspiring by itself. You know what I mean?
Yeah. It's it's so
Yeah.
magical, and I'm always, I feel this little bit of tension always of like, I want everyone to get to experience how like warm and welcoming and supportive this community is, and I don't want too many people to come in all at once because then it might break it, you know? Like there's
Totally.
there's something kind of
Yeah.
magical about it being like a little bit off the beaten path and a little bit
Yeah.
hard to find and a little bit like you're not completely normal if you're a dulcimer player, kind of.
Right, right. Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, and the way it ties into folk and, history and culture, and it's just, yeah, it's just such an inspiring thing all around, I feel.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, but to answer to actually answer your question, um I've had a lot of musical influences from like different countries because I grew up in so many different countries. So I think, Joni Mitchell was definitely someone, and in the folk space, I mean, Gina Ricci, all the, amazing players. But
yeah.
beyond that, I've been very inspired by Swedish folk music and things like, artists like Benny Andersson, who is the second or the first B of ABBA, who has written obviously, musicals and all kinds of folk inspired things. And I think that that's something that I really aspire to do. Yeah.
Mhm. I haven't been to Folk Alliance in a while, but the last time I was at Folk Alliance, the Swedish folk musicians were super well represented, and I had the best time sitting and playing tunes with the Swedish
Yeah.
folk group. So that's really cool.
Yeah. Yeah, they are. It really is incredible, for sure.
Yeah. Um, I, I just lost my train of thought, but it's gonna come back. Don't worry.
It
Oh, I
does
know.
eventually, usually.
You talked about your like content in your content, and one of the things that I
Right.
think like a lot of us dulcimer players are a little bit either tech averse or sort of like we're on the back side of technology, not the front side of technology. And I I know you've done a lot of like making TikTok videos and creating reels, and you seem to be a little more on the leading edge of using some of the social media things than a lot of us who are like, oh, I am trying to
Yeah.
I'm trying to keep up with some part of it. And for me, it's like I started with an email list, and my email list is strong. And then it's like, okay, now I'm
Mm,
also gonna work Facebook a little bit, and then another one comes and another one comes, and I just stopped trying to keep up with all of them. But I love
yeah,
watching the
it's a
things that
lot.
you've created, and I'm just interested, um, I guess, in like how are you using those different platforms, and why, and what are you hoping to do with the in those spaces, and what have been the results for you?
Yeah. I think so. I kind of used TikTok as like a jumping off point at this point. Like my content kind of goes and to all places kind of at once.
Yeah.
But TikTok was great because, back when it, especially went back when it started and when I started posting, it was the only social media platform that would show explicit, like would specifically um, prioritize showing your content to people who didn't follow you. Whereas like Facebook and Instagram,
Right.
you're sharing it with your friends, and that's great, and building that community is so important. But I had such fun on TikTok because, first of all, obviously, like, it's such a younger crowd, and it's
Mhm.
really fast paced, and all the trends and all the sounds and stuff is just really fun and like stimulating. But it was this, I do think that that's one of the reasons why I chose it, was because I wanted to see if there was any interest in that kind of demographic. Plus, then I thought at the time it would be a really, really good way to reach people who've never heard of the dulcimer,
Yeah.
never in their lives. So, and it's worked really well. It's worked really, really well. And I think I can confirm, like written, like actually confirm, I think I've gotten 11 people to get dulcimers. So,
Yay! That's so
yeah,
great.
yeah. I kind of
And who
always
knows how
say
many
that's like
that
my
just didn't
pride and
write to
joy.
you about it.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah. So that's why I usually say like 11 is confirmed.
Yeah, that's so great.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
remember kind of at the beginning of the pandemic time and shifting everything online for dulcimer players, there were some gatherings where there were people expressing concern that like if we didn't have in-person like offering a class at the community college or in the public library or whatever, that like no one would ever find the dulcimer again. Like it would be
mm,
fine for the people who already knew it existed and they would be able to come to the online spaces, but no one would ever like stumble upon the dulcimer if we weren't
mm,
prioritizing physical meeting places.
gotcha.
And I remember thinking, that sounds silly to me because people are discovering things online all the time. And so
Yeah,
hearing you say, like, at least 11 people because of your TikToks discovered and got dulcimers is just confirmation to me that, like, people discover things in all kinds of ways, including in the online spaces. And some people will
yeah,
discover it in an online space who would never walk into a community college class or a library class or something. So it's
yeah.
like super important and great that we are spreading the joy of the dulcimer through all kinds of different networks.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there's an opportunity with online content to make connections faster in a way. Like I have, the Joni Mitchell tutorials online. I have like YouTube video, like instructional videos of how to play the Joni Mitchell songs, and that stuff that I can put side by side with my own content, or I had one piece of content blow up where I was like, did you know that this is the instrument that is played on A Case of You? And then actually having the song there and having a picture of Joni Mitchell, having all these things that people can automatically kind of be like, I know what this is about, and I know
Yeah.
that I am going to be interested. And so it's like a faster way almost to hook people sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right. You can sort of discover it and go down the rabbit hole all in one fell swoop.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And it
Yeah.
and it isn't limited to being in a geographic location, which is part of the thing that I think has been so neat and about this sort of expansion into online spaces is also the expansion of people who are discovering the mountain dulcimer
Yeah.
in particular, which had this kind of narrow, like, if you're in this place, you've probably heard of it. Um,
Right.
but now
Yeah,
it's,
and to your point, like that's a lot of, I have a lot of followers that are in Europe, and I don't really, sometimes I don't know what to tell them when they ask like, "Hey, how do I buy a dulcimer?" You know what I mean?
yeah,
But some of them make it happen, and I would never, yeah, I get to reach those people, which is really fun.
yeah, that's really cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, tell me more about your songwriting and your creativity with the, I mean, all of your music. Tell me about your musical life.
Yeah. I mean, I started releasing music. I started writing when I was like 12 or 13. But then didn't release my first EP until I was like 23, like 10 years later, which was 2016 was my first EP,
Okay.
which was
Hmm.
very like poppy. And I, recorded it in Zurich, Switzerland, and it went, quite well. And then I moved to New York. I got a scholarship to a conservatory in New York. So I moved over there, and then I kind of fell into like the jazz and musical theater scene, which was pretty like unexpected. So I got, a lot of jazz. I was surrounded by a lot of jazz. And then, yeah, I describe the dulcimer sometimes as my gateway drug to folk, which is
Hmm.
not quite true because I did love folk before that, but I think it gave me an appreciation for the genre, that was deeper and more meaningful,
Hmm.
for sure. So yeah, it's been an evolution, definitely.
Yeah, it seems like your music kind of um dips into a lot of different kind of genres and would be hard to nail down as like it being one thing.
Yeah, yeah, a little bit. And it's definitely worked against me. But it's been a lot of fun, you know. Yeah.
Yeah, well, will you expound on that a little bit?
I think I think I've had the privilege to dip into different genres and different kind of parts of the industry to an extent,
Hmm.
that on when you're releasing music especially as an independent artist, nowadays you're very much expected to know exactly what your branding is, what your musical style is, which artists would you put yourself on a playlist with, like just having the algorithm of like all these Spotify and Apple Music, just having all of that work
Hmm.
means that you have to have a really cohesive like sound nowadays. And yeah, it's something that so dipping into different things and making something that isn't necessarily doesn't necessarily already exist isn't the smartest decision on like a business and industry,
Hmm.
um, from that perspective. But
Hmm.
I think it's been such a privilege to experience so many different styles, and yeah, and the people obviously you meet along the way,
Yeah,
and the people that you get to work with. Yeah.
yeah. So what's a day in the life of Helena Hallberg look like? Do you have an average day, or are they all completely different?
I think one of the reasons why I like this work so much is because it's so different, and I'm sure a lot of people can relate to that. Um, but we have our studio at home in Nashville, and in our house, so we, I go and do all my emails and stuff, and get to kind of sit and work with the dulcimer, and work with music in general. And then I usually tour a few times a year, and then I'm between Europe and the United States a lot. So um, my lifestyle does lend itself to quite varied. My days are quite varied, which is
Yeah,
great.
yeah.
Yeah.
So you recently got to play dulcimer with this really cool NATO concert, and it was on NPR, and all the dulcimer players were excited because there was a
Yeah.
dulcimer on TV. It was very cool. Will you tell us more
Yeah.
about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So I got invited to play the gala of the 75th anniversary of NATO in Washington, D.C. And this event was, the show was in the Coolidge Auditorium at the Library of Congress. And I was playing Dancing Queen on the dulcimer, obviously, with the American Pops. So I got invited as a guest artist, I guess. And it was all very surreal, and it was very cool. And you could really, really tell that people were not only fascinated by the fact that it was, ABBA, but, the questions about the dulcimer were never ending, which made me so happy. Um, but yeah, it was kind of crazy. I was sitting there in the dress rehearsal, and I look up and I see these little like name tags on the chairs, and I just had to stop looking because there were some crazy names there. And then I didn't know it was going to be on PBS. I had no idea. Um, so when that happened, when the Facebook group, I was like, what's happening? It's really cool.
Yeah, everybody's like, "Who was that playing the dulcimer?" I was like, "I know who it is. That's Helena.
I
That's so cool."
know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, I have also listened to your song From the Outside and watched that
Mm.
video like a bajillion times. I really, really like that song a lot.
Thank you.
Um, and that's one that you wrote, right?
Yeah, that was actually the first single off my recently released debut album. It's my first full length album.
Tell us all
Um,
about it.
yeah, that it was the first single that came off that record, and The video. I'm so glad you mentioned the video because it was filmed in the forest that I grew up around, which I'm actually very close to right now because I'm in Sweden right now. Um, and it was just yeah, it was a great experience. I've always been very I've wanted to involve work with a lot of women
Mm-hmm.
on my projects. I really enjoy yeah working in in spaces where there are a lot of women and the I worked with a local videographer who you know we were just walking around stamping around the woods and finding the nicest places to film and stuff. It was really really meaningful and with the dulcimer obviously yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hmm.
Do you want to tell us more about your album project?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, absolutely. So it's called Epithet. It was released in March. It was we recorded it at Power Station in New York City. We actually had an all-female production team, which is really cool because what is I think the statistic is there's 3% women female producers. Not there is, but the in the top in the popular music, there's the average percentage of female producers is 3%, and it was oh yeah, it was a great experience. You know, a lot of the songs are songs that I've had with me for a long time, so they're from different stages. So you know, I did mix genre wise. I took a few things out of a different pots, and and subject wise as well. I mean, I think I wrote most of these songs throughout my 20s, and so a lot of them, you know, are very much about like self-discovery um, and trying to find not necessarily yourself, but like something within yourself that makes you proud and happy and strong. Basically, finding your own strength.
Yeah.
So that was really awesome. And then during the process, during that album release cycle, so about 8 months before the release of the record, I moved down to Nashville from New York. So it's the whole record was just generally a really good time and a really good way to, I think, dig into some of the things, some of the themes I've been wanting to explore.
Yeah.
A lot of fun. Yeah.
Right, because when you work in like musical theater, you work with other people's projects, you're filling whatever space is needed in that for the project, but it's not as
Yeah,
much about like your own voice and your own expression. So that must feel really
absolutely.
nice to get to have that out in the world too.
Definitely, 100%. And I will say that I learned so much about songwriting from the people in theater, like from the composers and
Yeah.
yeah, there's so many talented, it's ridiculous, um, talented songwriters. And yeah, theater just it gave me a new perspective on songwriting for sure um in terms of formula and expression a lot is
Hmm.
you know, musical theater is very expressive and loud and you know just things like technique. I mean it's not necessarily easy to play show after show after show singing and you know belting and I'm quite an expressive singer like that and with especially sitting with the dulcimer and while playing. So I think that being in theater gave me a lot of like conditioning like that and technique. Yeah,
Hmm. Hmm.
yeah.
Yeah. As not a singer, I really appreciate the I really appreciate how much work goes into singing. But I remember I remember actually in college, I was sort of saying to one of my classmates, like, I'm not a singer. I just can't sing. And my classmate said, well, how many hours have you practiced playing the mountain dulcimer? And I was like, oh,
Oh,
hundreds of thousands of hours. And he was like, okay, well, how many hours have you practiced singing? And I was like, I don't think I knew you could. I just
mm,
thought some people can sing and some people can't sing, and that's kind of all there is to it. And he said, yeah, well, come back to me after you've practiced singing as much as you've practiced playing your instrument. And I was like,
yeah,
okay. So I
yeah,
really have a big appreciation now for understanding like it's not just open your mouth and the sounds come out are either good or not. It's like really a lot of work have vocal control and stamina and
Definitely. Yeah, yeah, 100%. I mean, it's a muscle, like everything else. The difference is, I always say that the difference is with singing is that it's good for you no matter how good at it you are. Does that make sense? Like the act of singing and expressing and using your body as an instrument is in itself just such a great thing
yeah.
for body
When
and
I
mind.
started teaching kids is when I was like, even though I don't feel like I'm a singer, I'm gonna sing now because it just feels like really important that kids have the experience of singing and are
Yeah,
encouraged to do that. And the
yeah,
kind of Pete Seeger, Woody Guthrie, everybody just needs to sing. It doesn't really matter how it comes out sounding, has been
right.
my place where I'm like, okay, I can at least do community singing. Like, it doesn't matter how you
Nice.
sound, you just need to all sing. So I'm never going to be a lead singer, but I have strong feelings about people just actually singing together and
Yeah,
there's some
yeah.
magic that happens when we
It's
play
powerful.
music or we sing in the same spaces. It
Yeah,
feels really important in times
yeah,
when other things feel shaky or divided, and music feels like this place where we come and it doesn't matter. All those other things don't matter as much.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
Which is
totally
part of
agree.
what, for me anyway, was so powerful in watching the NATO concert things was just like at the fact that in a meeting organized for like this is a war council basically, like this is an
Yeah,
alliance of people who are saying we'll fight for each other, that one of the things they prioritized was to have music in that space
yeah,
and to bring musicians from all over the world to do it. That felt like, oh, I feel better about
yeah,
the state of the world when the powerful government alliances are also recognizing the power of unity in music.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, that's how I felt too, and especially like, you know, communicating and hanging out with all the other artists and from different countries that came to DC for this. It's extremely powerful. It's really, and then at the same time, one of the reasons why they really wanted to invite me was because the conductor of the American Pops is from West Virginia. So he had grown up around the dulcimer and
Wow.
he saw it and he was like, "Oh my God, this is it. Like this is great. Let's get the dulcimer on stage." So I will say it's a huge in huge part thanks to Luke Frazier. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Mhm.
And I love it when I mean, you don't become the conductor of the American Pops if you're not very successful in the kind of formal conservatory music spaces. But
Yeah.
sometimes what happens then in those spaces is there's kind of a poo-pooing of the instruments that are the more folk instruments, and to know that like
Right.
that's a conductor who was like, no, this is really important and valuable and it needs to be included with all of the other instruments too is really encouraging to me.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, and I will say that I think the Pops orchestras are really unique and valuable in that sense. Like obviously they're incredibly talented and just wonderful orchestras, but but also the fact that they're they're very broad-minded and they and I think that that's what it should be like. Like I think it shouldn't be gate kept like that. And I yeah, not for a second did I feel in any way, shape, or form looked down upon because of my instrument. And in the opposite. People were so fascinated and yeah, it's really cool.
Yay.
Yeah.
You're representing the dulcimer so well around the world. I love it.
I really hope I am. Sometimes I'm very. I feel like it's. I know that my playing style and the music I play on the dulcimer. It's obviously not traditional and it's not. I do use it for my own purpose in my own way, but I have been, I think to me, it's very important to still keep going to the workshops and keep learning the songs you quote unquote should know on the dulcimer as a seasoned dulcimer player, because I do want to pay respect and be respectful and learn about the history of that, And at the same time, I really love just like taking it out of its original context and doing something completely new. So I'm
Yeah.
really trying to walk that line, and it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, I think that everyone comes to whatever instrument with their current context first, and then
Totally.
from the current context can be drawn backwards. So, like, I think
Right.
about my journey with the dulcimer, and I didn't know anyone who played the dulcimer. I got it because my dad found one cheap, and I
Oh, nice.
knew bluegrass music. So, that was like the
Mm.
context in which I found myself, and no one in the bluegrass community knew about dulcimers really. Like, they had maybe
Hmm.
seen them. It's funny because like 20 years later, people were telling me like, "Oh yeah, I made a dulcimer once," and I'm like, all of this time that I've known you, and you were like, "Dulcimer, I don't know about that," and you made a dulcimer. Like, why would you not tell me that sooner? Um, so there were some of those kind of funny things, but in the process, it was like, okay, so then I'm learning about the origins of bluegrass and I'm discovering old time music. And then I'm going back in time and I'm discovering like Jean Ritchie. I didn't know about Jean
Mm.
Ritchie until I had already been playing the dulcimer for probably 15 years. And now, of
Right.
course, she is a huge influence for me. I think it's really important for us to like know and share her music. And that's
Yeah.
certainly not the starting point that I came into it from. And that's
Right.
not going to be the starting point for a whole lot of people. It's going to be whatever is new. It's going to be Joni Mitchell or Helena Hallberg's albums or Sam Edelsten's rock and roll stuff, or, like it's people are going to
Yeah.
find it. They're going to get interested in it because in that context it sounds cool. And
Yeah.
then they're going to go back and learn the history. So I think that like, I think you taking that path with it is representative of how we all do it, right? We start in the context that we're in, we continue to use the instrument in the context we're in, and then sort of look forward and
For me
backwards.
right now. Oh, there we go. Oh, yeah.
Sorry, yeah, there was a little
No,
freezing moment,
that's
but
okay.
I
Yeah.
was just sort of naming the like we look forward and backward, and that's I think one
Totally.
of the things that I love about because I feel like you have in a lot of the videos I've seen your like TikTok content, you have talked about this is where it comes from, this is the
Hmm.
tradition of it, and also here's what I'm doing with it, and I think that's really beautiful.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I just because you mentioned Sam, I think he's the reason why I started playing ABBA on the instrument because he was like, you should try playing it like the I think yeah, he sent me something and I was like, I will try that. And then yeah, so shout
Yeah,
out to Sam. Yeah.
sweet.
Yeah.
What are you looking forward to next?
Ooh, lots of good things. I have a deluxe version of the record coming out in September, late September, early October. That has this version is going to have acoustic dulcimer covers of some of the songs off the record because I did, this is the record does have multiple dulcimer songs on it, and some of them are like full band songs, and I really wanted to give the songs that I wrote on the dulcimer that were meant for the dulcimer, I wanted to give them another chance to shine and kind of recontextualize them, to honor the instrument a little more. So that's something that's coming up that I'm really, really excited about.
Yay.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Where's your touring taking you next? Do you have touring
Um,
plans?
yeah, I mean, it's a tricky thing. I've been touring mostly in the States this year, which has been so much fun because I'm not American, and getting to discover the United States is one of the things that makes me happiest. So I've definitely been touring in the United States, and then next year it'll probably a lot of Europe. Actually, I think it's time to kind of reach back to my roots and see what's
Yeah.
up, and because I know that there are interested people over here that want me to come play, and obviously I really want to do that. So it'll probably be a good mix, to answer your question, of the United States and like Central Europe, continental Europe.
That's great.
Yeah.
Um, I I discovered that there are two dulcimer clubs in Germany when I was in Europe last
Mm.
summer. So there's a couple of dulcimer
Oh,
centric kind of
cool.
things going on there. And of course, the UK has
Yeah,
the Nonsuch Dulcimer Club. And I know
right.
that Italy is working on building
Nice.
a dulcimer community. So those are ones I know about. I'm sure there's a lot
Yeah,
more
yeah.
kind of going on. And of course, all the other musical influences and, folk music. And so
Yeah.
it's really cool.
Yeah, yeah. No, getting to connect with people abroad and like in my home area that play the dulcimer, that's been really, really, really special. That's been really, yeah, it's been incredible. And seeing how, what their perception is of the culture and the music surrounding the dulcimer.
Right,
It's always the
right.
perspectives are always very, very interesting, really exciting.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Okay, I would love to talk to you and talk to you and talk to you, and I really hope someday we get to
Yeah.
hang out in person and do that.
Yeah, I know.
You
We've
came
never
to
met in
Folk
person.
Alliance in Kansas City, which is not very far from me actually, and I had been on the fence about going, and I had finally decided I wasn't gonna go, and then I found out you were coming, and I was like, oh, I'm so disappointed that I didn't go just so that I could have hung out with you a little bit.
Oh,
Um,
yeah.
but
Yeah,
someday our
Folk
paths will
Alliance. Totally. Yeah, no, and that's what's so great about this community is you meet people in person eventually, if that's what it feels like.
cross.
Yeah, Folk Alliance is great. It's been such a resource for me and such a great networking opportunity. But I've always kind of been the only dulcimer player, and I want to change that, as much as I can. I'd love to encourage people to come, but it's intense and it's a lot.
Yeah.
So not everyone's
We'll,
cup of tea.
we'll
So
work on organizing dulcimer players at Folk Alliance. I know there's been some dulcimer players at
exactly.
various different regional ones, and
Yeah.
we've over the years that's been kind of a small little side conversation happening about like, well, maybe we could do more with dulcimers at Folk Alliance. So
Yeah. Yeah.
we'll try and
Yeah.
see what
Be
happens.
awesome.
All right.
Yeah.
I hope you have a great season.
Thank you.
I'm super excited for your new album. Let us know when it
Yeah.
comes out. And your
I
your
will.
website is just helenahallberg.com.
Yep.
So folks
That's
can
it.
find you. Go
Yep.
listen.
And everywhere on socials, I'm just Helena Hallberg Music. You can find me
Okay.
for sure.
Fantastic. Well, go follow her if you haven't yet. Those of you who are watching this. Our next talk in a couple weeks will be with Bonnie Carroll, who's been a mountain dulcimer and hammer dulcimer player, teacher, mountain dulcimer builder extraordinaire from Colorado.
Mm.
So
Oh,
that's
cool.
the next talk that's coming up. And the archive is on YouTube, right where you find the live video at the same link. So yeah, that's great. Thank you so much, Helena. Thanks for sharing
Thank
some
you for
time with
having
us.
me. So nice to talk to you. Yeah.
All right. Bye, friends.